Melanie is current radiation therapy team leader with the Central Adelaide Local Health Network. She's one of our bright RTs and also serves as chair of the ASMIRT Particle Therapy Working Group. So she'll be talking about the ASMIRT Proposal for professional training and certification. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you to Peter and to Samarie for organising and hosting this event. As Peter said, my name is Melanie Penfold and I'm part of the ASMIRT Particle Therapy Working Group. So I'm going to be giving an update today on education and training for radiation therapists, and in particular the certification that we've got planning underway. So I'm aware that there may be some new faces online and here with us today, so I'll just give a bit of a background as to who we are and what we do. The ASMIRT Particle Therapy Working Group was formed in December 2018. We hold bi-monthly meetings via Zoom, and our main aim is to inform the ASMIRT board on all matters pertaining to particle therapy. So we collaborate quite closely with RANZCA and ACP-SEM and other stakeholders, and the main focus for us at the moment is preparing the workforce. So what kind of training and education do radiation therapists need in line with the introduction of particle therapy to Australia? So training and education, what do we need to do? Well, we have discussed this at length for some time now, and we've got a number of questions that we have asked as a group. So we wanted to know, what have other particle therapy centres done in terms of training? And we're fortunate in Australia that we can learn from other centres around the world who've been established and new and established centres. So we wanted to know also what kind of overseas courses were available, what vendor training was available, and what site visits might be appropriate. But closer to home, we wanted to work out what is currently covered in the undergraduate degree. So what are our new grads, how much information do they have about particle therapy? And we also wanted to know from the Australian universities if there was any postgraduate course or module certificates that may be coming out soon. So what we have done, we have gathered information from other centres around the world through our network. And I echo what Peter and Hian has said earlier, in that everyone that we have approached has been extremely helpful in providing information to us about how they've put their centre together and their training and education of their staff. We've also conducted two surveys as well. So one of them was the Australian universities to ascertain what content was being delivered, and a survey of the ASMIRT radiation therapy members. And we wanted to gauge the level of particle therapy knowledge amongst our colleagues. So what have other centres done? Well, we reached out to a number of different people within our network, and this included people who were working in Manchester, Florida, Memphis, Boston, Denmark and Sweden. We received a lot of information, which is very useful, and we're very appreciative for that. And we've kept all of this information. A lot of it was pertaining to the team directly involved in setting up a brand new proton therapy centre. And what we wanted to know right now is, in a broader sense, what kind of education and training the RTs have been through in each country, regardless of whether they're setting up a proton therapy centre or not. And what we found was that no mandatory tertiary education is required prior to any RTs working with protons. So it is simply an extension of what we do. So we also surveyed the Australian universities back in 2019. What we found from that was particle therapy is included in all universities surveyed, but not as a standalone subject. So particle therapy might be covered in subjects such as radiobiology and physics, and this content is assessed, but there's no standalone particle therapy content. We also found that particle therapy content is commonly included in the final year or final years, so years 3 and 4, but in some universities it's included right from the beginning in year 1. So the Medical Radiation Practice Board of Australia, they set out a draft revised professional capabilities document for public review and consultation in 2019. So as I was saying before, as our group is, our aim is to inform the board on any matters pertaining to particle therapy. So our group read this document with the aim of providing feedback in terms of particle therapy. And for those of you who don't know, the MRPBA, they set the minimum knowledge, skills and attributes that RTs are required for clinical practice. And the universities also use this document as a way of setting their curriculum. So the particle therapy working group, we provided feedback on this, and the main point for us was that particle therapy warrants its own consideration by the MRPBA in the coming years to have its own optional key capability. And this just means that the universities have more scope to put in a standalone particle or proton therapy subject or content. We conducted a survey of the ASMIRT radiation therapy members also in 2019. We had 77 respondents, and a large number of those were from Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales. We asked the question, how many years have you been working as a radiation therapist? And so this graph shows that there is a bit of a split between the years qualified. However, approximately half of them who responded have been working and qualified for 21 years or more. So it was no surprise then when we asked, was particle therapy included as part of your original training or university degree? 77% said no. So there's a large component of our workforce at the moment that have no tertiary or formal education in particle therapy. So we also wanted to know from our members how they would rate their knowledge of particle therapy. And the options were very little or none, some, good or advanced. And around 80% surveyed had very little to none or some particle therapy knowledge. So what's next? So we can see that there is a gap in knowledge amongst our RT colleagues, and our group has had lengthy discussions about how we might try to fill this gap in knowledge. So we've had discussions around different events that we could put on, such as a CPD event or participation in the conferences, or a particle therapy certification. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next slide. And we're also actively collaborating with the universities. So we've had a few discussions with UniSA already. And unfortunately, due to COVID, their proposal for a postgrad particle therapy course is a bit on the back burner, but we will keep those conversations ongoing. And I'd just like to point out here as well that we have access to the eIntegrity site, and I'm sure some of you have heard me talking about that before, but it's a UK learning platform. And ASMIRT has access to this, and there is a proton beam therapy course within that, which just sets out what proton beam therapy is. And it's a great starting point if anyone does want to know any more about it. And also on that note, it was interesting that while there was no mandatory training set for the radiation therapists, it was highly advised by the ASMIRT equivalent in the UK, the Royal College of Radiographers. They deemed it essential that all members of the profession have an understanding of how proton beam therapy works to advise both their patients and other healthcare workers. So upskilling of the general RT population was definitely encouraged in the UK for those reasons. So the ASMIRT particle therapy certification, well, we are proceeding with that at the moment, and the aim is to fill the knowledge gap. So it will be a more entry-level particle therapy certification. There is still the likelihood that there will be postgraduate courses in particle therapy in the future, and we'll keep those discussions with the universities open. For now, we will be continuing with a two-part certification. So it's similar to the other ASMIRT certification courses that are available to our members currently. So the particle therapy working group has had to remain really flexible and adaptable, as this has been an evolving plan over time, and it will continue to change. We don't yet know what kind of learning management system our certification will be uploaded to, and there are many other details that we haven't nutted out yet. So it is definitely a work in progress. We are continuing with the part A, so the theory part, with the idea that there may be a part B, a practical component that could be completed either here or somewhere else with a proton centre. So we are happy to collaborate and share. So when we build this content, if there's other disciplines that would benefit from learning about what radiation therapists clinically do in terms of proton planning, and treatment delivery, then we are happy to share that with others. The ASMIRT Particle Therapy Working Group, they're currently divided into two, and we've got half of the group working on proton planning and the other half working on a proton treatment delivery module. So that's about it that we can talk about in terms of the actual certification. But what else is coming up? And there are some other opportunities for people, RTs, to learn about proton therapy. So we have the ASMIRT conference in May next year, and it's not particle themed or proton themed, but there will be some proton therapy talks by some international speakers and also some local experts. The Particle Therapy Working Group is also organising a proton therapy workshop, and that'll be a half-day workshop that'll sit either side of the conference. And we also have a few of our members who may be guest editors with the JMRS, and we are looking to have a special edition of proton therapy that will be out in the next 18 to 24 months, which will time quite nicely with the opening of the Bragg Centre. And finally, I would just like to take this opportunity to say thank you to a couple of team members who will be leaving us at the end of their 3-year term. So Greg and Peter, hopefully they're online. A big thank you, and we appreciate all the work that they have done with this group. And there are a couple of vacancies in our group, so if anyone is interested, please come and speak to myself or any one of the team members. We'll be happy to explain a bit further about what we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. That was a really interesting talk. Are there any questions from the floor or from online? It looks like there is a question. So Verity, I think it is. She asks, I'm a little bit blind from here, why wouldn't RANSCA include a separate annual peer minimum numbers required for PBT? Just there is a peer review of 30 cases annually already required as part of the RANSCA standards.
Yes, I was responding to that question and saying that the RANSCA is actually proposing in the talk that Unji gave to have a minimum of 10 cases that are treated per year, and they all need to be peer reviewed for their plan.